So today we have Joe Matthews with us from the University of Miami School of Law, and he's going to be talking to you guys about when to write an addendum. I'm going to go ahead and let him take it away. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. And for those of you that um, I haven't spoken with before, it's a pleasure again to be here. My name is Joe Matthews. I'm the Director of Student Recruitment and Admissions here at the University of Miami School of Law. I've been doing admissions for over a decade now. It's been a pleasure. And I also went to law school at the University of Miami. So I too went through the process that you are. So what I'm going to do is basically go through a little bit about the timeline of what the application system looks like, because that's really crucial right now. Very briefly, talk about the University of Miami School of Law. This is a quick overview in case you have any questions about our programs moving forward, and then do a little bit of a 101 session on what an addenda is, because there that could be crucial, if not one of the most important parts of an application that is often overlooked. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, I try to keep these as quick as possible, but please make sure that you put it into the chat and I can address it afterwards, or you can raise your hand and I can call on you too. So the timeline is, again, the most important thing that you need to worry about right now. For those of you that are applying in the future, you need to give yourself 18 months to really give yourself as much time as possible to prepare. And I always say that right now, if you are a junior or senior that is planning to do a gap year, this is when you are studying for the LSAT right now. Right now, you are getting your commercial program. You're studying as we speak. If you're a sophomore or a freshman, make sure that you clock that this is when you need to get into gear. Usually February is when you want to start studying, because you need 6 to 5 months to really be the most prepared for the LSAT, so that you can take it in the summer, take it in June, July, August, or September. You want to take it as early as you can, because as you can see here, September 1st is when we open up our application, as do most law schools in the United States. So you want to be the first people to apply, right? So you want to apply before Thanksgiving, November, of the year before you want to start. I think that's kind of even late now. I would probably even push for like Halloween. So have all your materials done. So if you're applying by Halloween, that means that you've taken your first and possibly your second LSAT attempts again before that, right? So that's why you want to try to take it in early summer or midsummer, and then take your secondary one if you need to try to increase your score in August or September or October. So that gives you your two attempts of LSAT, and then you're completed, you're done, you're submitted. We have an early decision binding program that you can apply to typically the first week of November, like November 1st, November 2nd is when we have our deadline. And if you do ED to a school, you can only do that for one school, and you're signifying to that school that that's your top school program, and you get from us in consideration of that, you're getting a heightened consideration for both admission and scholarship. So you're limiting your options of where you can apply, but you're getting in return heightened ability to be admitted or get scholarship. So only do that if you're really like sold. That's the school I would go to, even if I didn't get scholarship. We have a priority deadline of December 15th. Now that might change, but this is what we had this year, what we plan on having. Most schools have December 15th or January 15th as their priority deadline, again, because that signifies to you from the school, hey, we're getting the majority of our applications by that point. And again, you want to be in early and not in late, because we do rolling admission, which means we're admitting as we get applications. So you never want to, and we have this year, this is a crazy cycle, people that applied December 15th, and they're still waiting to hear back a decision. And that's just because we have so many people applying this year. It's just really it's a very thick application cycle pool. So I suspect it'll be very similar for your years. So just try to get it in as early as possible. Now, right now, where we are right now in this year, to model and mirror what you'll see right now, we have that we're in that January to April timeline, right? We're in spring. We just had our admit student days. We've already admitted the majority of the people that we're going to admit for the cycle. We're having them come to campus. We just finished our last admit student day last Friday, which is why I still have red eyes. I'm tired. But we invite all the admit students to campus. We show them the program and the alumni and the faculty. And then they have April 15th. So really, less than a month away. The students have to make their decision of where they apply. Where they commit. It's not binding for most schools, but April 15th, that's when you've kind of decided where you're going to attend. So just really quickly, again, your window to apply to most schools is September 1st to July. We close our windows to apply for Miami July 15. Some schools July 1 or July 31st, but typically July 15 is like the standard window to apply by. But you want to apply early, you want to apply before December. I think you want to apply by October 31st. And we have early decisions, which typically end by early November. Now, really quick, I just want to get into this a little bit about Miami. Now, you guys are in Orlando. You're Central Florida, possibly South or North Florida originally, or elsewhere. You know about Miami. You know the city itself. Maybe you've never been here, but this is a great place to go to law school. I invite you to come. In fact, I come to you guys quite a bit. And the Florida Bar, which runs all the lawyers, right? We have like 40,000 lawyers in Florida. We all converge in Orlando in June 25th to be exact. So if you're interested in going to these Florida bar conferences that every attorney goes to, you're welcome to sign up as a guest. So I encourage you to do that, and I can talk more about that in the questionnaire. But Miami, we all of our Miami alums will be it by you, but we have 18 areas of study. What makes us unique as a law school is we don't really limit at all the types of areas that you can study as a law student. And that's because we have over 300 electives to choose from. We have almost 300 faculty members. We're a huge program built so that you can explore every type of law. We're cutting edge and innovative. We're one of the only law schools in the United States to do AI in law, artificial intelligence. We're only one of the only law schools that do international arbitration, estate planning, taxation, sports and entertainment law, taxation across border. We have real estate property development. We're one of the few law schools that really dive into these very niche areas of law. So I encourage you to explore that. But we also have joint degrees with 26 other programs on the main campus. So there's a lot for you to enjoy. I mentioned those 18 areas. Well, this is what that looks like. It really encompasses everything that you could do. The Florida Bar recognizes 40 actual legal practice areas, like space law and dolphin preservation. There are very niche areas of law, but they all fall under one of these 18 areas, whether it's tax or entertainment or intellectual property or immigration or human rights. You'll find the subsections from those areas, and we have classes in all those areas. So anything you would possibly want to explore, we definitely have those here. We are a big practical schools program. Since we're in a big legal city like Miami, like New York, like Chicago, like Los Angeles, we have a lot of firms here, lots of federal agencies, lots of nonprofits, a lot of public sector. So all those attorneys are working 24/7 here in the city. So we try to take advantage of that, like the other big cities, like I mentioned, by allowing you as a law student to get hands-on experience. You're not going to be in a small college town. You're not going to be, um, you know, trying to or only able to really explore the things in the summers when you can travel to where the firms are. You will have that every day of the week here. So we want you to really get experiential learning, and we do that through clinical experiences, simulations, and field placements, not just domestically, but internationally too. So we're big on that. And then we also do a lot of student support. We believe very heavily that if you're happy, if you're well, if you're mindful, if you're in a positive space, you're going to make better decisions, both academically and for your future clients. And you need to learn those skills now. Otherwise, when you get into practice, you might have some bad things that you brought into your study process and the way that you handle difficult situations, challenging circumstances that will affect you mentally. And we don't want that. We want you to succeed. We want you to flourish. So we do a lot of things here as a law student to help you build really healthy spaces for you to superbly be the best person that you can be. And then we're very vibrant, very diverse in perspective, very fun place to be because we want you again to do things that are going to be healthy in your academic growth. So we have close to 60 plus student organizations that will help you find your space, find your tribe. We have 26 international field placements, international exchange to go to study abroad. We have 5 law review journals, 3 moot court programs, and the only international moot court program in the United States. We're the only program that travels to all the other major international moots. Right now, we have 6 students and faculty in Budapest for the International Viz Moot competitions, the biggest in the world every year. So there's a whole bunch you can do. And then if you, of course, want to do public interest, we have one of the most robust public interest programs in the United States. And then again, just a little bit on outcomes. We have phenomenal outcomes. One of the largest placements for employment out of any U.S. law school. One of the strongest bar passages in the state and internet in the other jurisdictions like New York and North Carolina and California and Texas. And we're one of the top programs for big law placement in the country. And then, of course, again, you guys know this because you're from Florida, but this is Miami. There's a lot of really cool things to do here. We're the gateway internationally now, not just for Latin America, but for Europe, the Caribbean, Africa, Asia, Middle East. This is the new most international city in the world. And then that's inclusive of startup, AI. We're bigger than Silicon Valley now in those areas. So there's a lot of movement down here and a lot you can do. Now, to the real meat and potatoes of what we're talking about today. And again, this is a very small topic area compared to like personal statements or letters of recommendation, but is equally as important. Why? Because this is an additional document that you're submitting to law schools to read. And when I tell you that we read them, I mean that very, very sincerely. We read everything that you submit to us, inclusive of an addendum. So that's why it takes us so long to review applications because we really read everything and have a multi-committee review. So it's not just me, it's not just a faculty member, it's multiple people reading your application from front to back and making notes on everything you submit. So an addendum is an additional document that you're submitting beyond what we require. So what do we require? Well, we require the personal statement. We require 2 letters of recommendation. We require your resume. We require the actual application itself, which has optional essays built into it already. And if you have something else that you need to submit to us, that's an addenda. So an addenda, plural, addenda will cover anything else that you want to facilitate in a narrative to the law school commission. And it's a lot that you could talk about there. So, what exactly is the purpose of it? Well, you're basically just giving an additional narrative of something that you think that we need more additional information about. And that is crucial because things happen in your life. There are things that are in your application that might be missed. There are things that you need to give additional context to that a number itself is not going to explain. So that could be your GPA. Maybe you were a pre-med student in your first semester. You took organic chemistry and you flunked it. You hated it. This is not for you. So you switch to history or pre-law or something like that. Well, your GPA is going to suffer, right? Because you had really hard med classes in that first semester and you had a C average and now you're flourishing. But your GPA is still not, as great as it could have been if you had started in the right major from the get-go. Or maybe your LSAT. Maybe you took the LSAT in June and you had COVID. You didn't realize it. And all of a sudden it started manifesting during a test. So you took it, you didn't realize that you were really under the weather, and then you just horrible in the test. And you took it the second time. And man, you blew it out of the water. You did amazing. You had a 25-point increase. Well, we're not going to know you had COVID for that first time. That's nowhere anywhere asked in your application. So you need to give a little more context. Maybe you had a transfer situation where you transfer from one college to UCF and your GPA was horrible in that first place, and now it's great at UCF. And the GPA we see for every admit, every applicant, is the cumulative GPA. That's inclusive of your transfer credits. What if you did a pre-bachelorette program in high school? Maybe you did the Cambridge program and it was really hard on you as a high school student and you passed those grades, you got that college credit, but you got a C plus, a B in those classes, which at the time in high school, you were just happy that you got college credit. But now you're seeing it affect your cumulative GPA because now you have a C in a college level course. Maybe you had the leave of absence because there was a personal issue with your family or you, or something, God forbid, something horrible happened personally that you had to take a LOA for and step away from college and then come back. Again, we don't have that information. We don't ask that in the application, but you should give us that information. Maybe, and this is required, and I put required applicable because every school is a little bit different depending on where you're applying based on the requirements given by the state bar examiners of that state. So the state of Florida has very, very specific guidelines of what we need to ask you if certain things happened in your past. So every law school across the board in every 50 states, well, except for Alaska, because they don't have a law school there, they will ask you, well, in Puerto Rico, I'll count that as 50. They will ask you, do you have any character or fitness issues in your background? Did you have any arrests, any felonies, any convictions, any trials, any large amount of traffic citation violations? Did you have a bankruptcy? Do you have a lot of loans that are outstanding that you're in debt collection for? Did you have any issues at UCF in residential housing where you got a warning because there was a smoke alarm that went off and they found that you had cigarettes in your dorm? Or there was a sound violation because you were having a loud Minecraft party all night long, and you got a sound violation from the RA. That stuff's in your permanent record, and that needs to be told to the law schools. Why do we ask that question? Why do we require it? Because the state bar examiners ask that. And when you graduate from law school and you pass the bar exam, congratulations, they're going to ask an additional question. And they're not going to ask that of you. They're going to ask that of the federal government and the state government. They're going to do a background check into everything, inclusive of anything that maybe you expunged from your record. They're going to look at things when you were a minor. They're going to look at your record from college. They're going to do a deep dive. Like they have a huge um, office and personnel to do extensive background checks on everyone that passed the bar to see if now you passed it academically, but do you have the character, the integrity, the choice of of reasoning to be a lawyer and have that additional Esquire on your name. And if you did not report those things to the law schools you're applying to, but then they find it in your records, they're not going to let you pass the bar because you weren't open and honest and candid from the get-go. There's nothing wrong with having a bunch of traffic citations other than monetarily. There's nothing wrong with having an arrest. Maybe it was a wrongful arrest. Maybe you were wrongfully accused and that conviction was found to be you know dismissed. Maybe you had a violation on your record from college, but it was found to be not worthy of a demerit. Well, it's still on your record. You still need to give us additional information. And what is that document you're going to submit to explain it with context? An addendum. So that's why an addendum is incredibly important when you're applying to law schools. Now, a few quick tips. This is an addendum. This is not a personal statement. This is not a two-page document giving us the reasons why you love dogs and this is why you want to go into animal rights activism. This is a explanation, and the explanation does not mean the same thing as excusatory. We're not looking for an excuse. We're looking for an explanation. Explain why this is on your record. Explain why your LSAT was lower in the first attempt. Explain why you have a 3-year gap in between your resume between college now when you're applying. Explain it. Don't give excuses. We do not want you to excuse actions. We want you to take ownership of actions. Why? Not because that we are looking for that, but because the state bar examiners will be. If you were arrested for attempted murder and you were found guilty of attempted murder, explain and take ownership of the fact that you got put into prison for attempted murder. Taking ownership of something is what will redeem you and will not be an issue moving forward. But if you're saying, I was arrested because I was holding a beer, and it wasn't my beer. I was holding my friend's beer because my friend was gonna go to the restroom, and I'm under 21, and they told me to hold it for them. And I was just being a nice friend. Don't do that. Just say, look, I got arrested for holding a beer underage. I take full responsibility that I was holding that beer and I did what was required of me under law, and it is no longer going to be an issue moving forward. Acknowledge what happened. Give us the context of why, but don't give an excuse of why it wasn't your fault. Just take ownership of it, and also most importantly, if necessary, explain why that should not negatively impact your admission because it's not going to negatively impact you as a student, right? So you were found guilty of perjury in a class. Um, Take ownership of it and you learned your lesson. You would never do that moving forward. You understand the ramifications of that. You understand how that doesn't reflect you the best that you can be, and it's not going to be an issue moving forward. Talk about how that's not going to be an issue. Let's even go further. Let's say you have to take a leave of absence because you had um, a a mental breakdown. Let's be honest. You had anxiety about something that happened that was beyond your control. You had to take leave of absence. Well, explain that that's not going to be an issue moving forward. And I'm not saying that you're not going to have mental lapses. I'm saying you are aware of this. You are taking steps to make sure this doesn't happen again. You are working with a therapist or you are under medication. You don't need to divulge your life to us. Again, remember there is FERPA, there is actual legislation that will require us from not giving any of this information to anybody. We can't even give this information to your parents unless you give us permission to do that. We can't even give this information to people that work in the law school or the main university that don't have um, confidential training about law school applications. We are very guarded about this information. So don't feel afraid to give us this info, medical or FERPA or HIPAA related, but um, it's important that you give context about why this not going to be an issue. And again, if you can, remember you want to be a lawyer, spin it, highlight how this is something positive. Look, I dealt with this obstacle in the past. I had to take a leave of absence, but now I'm so glad that I did that because now I understand how to move forward. I had a DUI. And I was arrested for being under the influence of a narcotic. And based on that, now I have empathy for people that have gone through that. I understand the legal ramifications. I understand the hurdles that have to be gone through. And I'm not happy to say that it happened, but I am taking out of that elements that I can use to be a successful attorney and or student going forward. So again, highlight a negative and a positive if you can. All right, this is really important. The applications for each school have completely different instructions. Some schools require things very differently than others. So just make sure, if you can, that you are following the application instructions that are given to you. Maybe the schools don't even will allow you. Maybe they don't even want an addendum. Miami Law does. The University of Miami loves an addenda, but maybe the school you're applying to doesn't even want them, and they're not going to even accept it. So don't include it if they won't accept it. Call the law school themselves. Ask them if that's something that's necessary or if you can submit in the first place. And then if they do allow it, ensure that you're submitting it in the proper venue. Maybe the law schools don't want you to submit it with the application. They want you to email directly to them. Maybe they want you to submit it as an additional page to the personal statement. So now there's a limit of 2 pages on that personal statement, but they'll allow you to add a third and fourth page with addenda. Maybe they want have a separate way that you can upload directly to LSAC as an additional document upload. Make sure you're following the instructions of that school because to be a successful attorney and law student, you have to understand how to follow the instructions. If you submit a motion to the court and you don't follow their instructions, they're not going to accept it and they're going to dismiss it right off the bat. So this is an important lesson that all attorneys must have. And if we see that you can't follow simple instructions, that might be a red flag about how successful you're going to be as a law student or attorney. So you always want to follow instructions. And of course, this is really important. Um, Make sure that we didn't already ask you this information. These are three questions that the University of Miami School of Law already will be asking you in the application. So there's no need to submit an addendum unless you need to go beyond the 500 character limit. So we already ask you, do you have any advocacy or public service in your background? You don't have to do an addendum on your public interest if you already submitted this. We already asked you if you have any significant writing. Please do not submit an addendum to us or any school with your 30-page thesis that you submitted for your doctorate or your pre-law program or your 15-page term paper to demonstrate your writing skills. Do not do that for any school unless they ask for it, which I don't think any do. But we would love to know in 500 characters, a quick extract about your significant writing and background. That's an important key to being successful as a student. So we ask you that as a mini addenda in the application. Do not give us more on your obstacles that you've overcome if it goes beyond what you've already asked us um, in our writing. So we already asked you, have you overcome any obstacles? And that can be anything from um, an arrest or anything like that. But if you if you have something that you want, like an example of an addendum that's very common in the past that is not as common anymore, is diversity statements. Now, law schools do not require diversity statements. However, we don't ask you about that other than overcoming your obstacles. So if you have something that's a diverse perspective, a different language, you come from a social economic background that was you know, a challenge when you're growing up, you can put that here. But maybe you want to expand it. Maybe there's something that gives you even more of a diverse background that you want to submit an addendum on. Well, in this little small section, you can put, please see my addendum on my diverse perspectives. And then you can submit a even further document if you want to. So sometimes there are better places to put this information than others. So just make sure, again, you're following the instructions given. And that is my quick 101 on addenda. I have here a QR code. If you want to take a picture of it with your phone or scan it, it'll bring you to our website where you'll see more information about where to uh, interact with us, do Zooms, all that stuff. We do LSAT workshops that will be starting up in about a month. So I encourage you to do our Admission 101 sessions, which are similar to these. And if there's anything you need moving forward, I am here. So that is the quick rundown. I'm going to stop my sharing and see if you guys have any questions. So if you have any questions, you feel free to put it in the chat room or raise your hand or otherwise. And if you don't have any questions, totally fine. I'm going to put in the chat here. This is my email. You're welcome to email me with any question. And then this is my phone number to my office. You're welcome to give a call with anything that you need. Is there anything else I can offer or any questions you guys have?
Thank you so much, Joe. I'm going to give the students a couple minutes to see if they have any questions. In the meantime, I can ask you a few questions we had in the past
Definitely.
to see if that could help out students. So sometimes students that are pursuing like a different graduate degree before pivoting to law are a little like insecure, a little worried that that experience will dissuade them or not allow them to be accepted. Do you have any recommendations if students should clarify why they've made like a career shift or why they've changed perhaps like majors?
It's not necessary. I only think it's important to highlight that if it affected you academically. But we love to see growth. We love to see you learning what is your best path. There's no need to talk about changes in resume. And I think I'm sorry, the resume in majors. I do think I get a lot of this where there's a misunderstanding of pointing out and submitting addendums on I would like the committee to see that in my major, I had a GPA of 3.9, even though my cumulative, my other classes that I had in a different major that made that, that cumulative GPA was 2.5. We don't look at your major specific GPA. We only look at the cumulative. So it's okay to give context about that, but it's not necessary. And I don't think it's it's needed within the context of an application. If you change around a lot, unless there's an academic reason to demonstrate that that's why my GPA was fluctuating so much. And I see a question in the chat. Would an addenda be helpful for any failures in other interview processes? For example, in police department applications. So, I have seen that quite a bit where a student will submit an addendum specifically about like law enforcement applications. And I don't think it is necessary to point out your failures unless you think it's needed for something else. So I always kind of bring it back to like dating. So, admissions is not like dating because we're looking at more than just an attraction, right? But when you're on a date, if it's going very well, and then you take a minute to pause and say, by the way, I might have six other people that I'm dating in different countries. You don't necessarily need to divulge information that's not needed to the process. So you don't need to bring up things that are negative in your past unless you think it's helpful to demonstrate how you can overcome a challenge, or maybe we already know that. Like, so, in the purpose of like your resume, um, if there's maybe to answer your question directly, if you were in the process of trying to get a job and that fizzled out and you didn't get that opportunity, and that's why there's a huge gap in your resume, then maybe you want to point out there. But it's a balancing act, right? Maybe divulging that info is actually not going to help you give an explanation. So, yeah. In those types of cases, maybe call the law school directly and ask, hey, is this important for me to note, or do you think it would be helpful? And the other question says, if you want to explain two different issues like GPA and a criminal charge, should you submit two different addenda? Yes, they should be separate addenda. I typically say a paragraph at most. You have one page and it says addenda on my academics. Done. Second page submitted, addenda on my on a criminal charge or character and fitness addenda. You want those to be completely separate. Do not merge them into two. Make sure they're completely separate documents. If you started college at 18 and did poorly the first time due to circumstances, mine would look at your improvement upon returning. Yes, we do. So that again would be an example of an addendum that can demonstrate growth and changes, and why what you're currently doing now does not match up or reflect what you did in the past. But again, remember that it'll give us explanation, but your cumulative GPA will still be the most important thing that we look at. On top of an addendum, if you have a GPA lower than the requirements of the law school you're applying to, are there any particular skills, activities, or other things you look for that might increase the applicant's chances of admission? 100%. So it's a very holistic review. So if your GPA is below median, so we don't have any requirements, but if you're below the median of the admitted pool of that school, so for example, for Miami, last year, our admitted median was a 3.8. If you're below a 3.8 GPA, that's okay. We will look into other things, but you want to outweigh, right? So if everything is below, that's not good. But if your GPA is below median and your LSAT is above, great. You've just balanced it out. If your GPA is below median and your LSAT is a little bit below median too, but you have an amazing resume, amazing leadership skills, amazing writing skills, amazing recommenders, yes, that can help balance it out. So we do look holistically at everything, but remember, if one thing is a concern, it's not going to delete it, but we want to look for other things that will help alleviate that issue by showing the other strengths that you're bringing in. On cumulative GPA, my cumulative is a 3.4, but my major is a 3.9. Should I write an addendum? No. Um, your cumulative is important. We look at your entire academic history. I don't think it's important, or to be perfectly frank, helpful to carve out, because it's trying to for us, you're trying to do smoke and mirrors, right? You're like, don't look at this GPA, look at this GPA. Just take it as it is. Look at the cumulative. If you want to, somehow spin it that, that you are aware that your cumulative is a 3.4, but you're very proud of the fact that in the later cycles you had academic growth upwards as you headed into more of your major requirements that were more indicative of your interests. Sure, you can do that, but I don't necessarily think it's going to help much. The cumulative is going to be the more controlling thing, specifically in these cycles. These competitive cycles don't give admissions committees the need to be to look at that stuff, right? Unfortunately, right now it's a seller's market. It's not a buyer's market. So you want to, paint yourself in the best picture possible, but to understand that there are going to be some really good applicants to compare you to, no matter where you're applying. So don't try to minimize something in your application. Just have that be what it is, and then try to use other things to help push yourself up. These are great questions. Any other questions? Feel free to put it in. Otherwise, I'm happy to speak otherwise via email or phone call at any time.
Oh, we have
What
one more question. Oh,
Sure.
sorry, you can go ahead.
Oh,
Do you want me
what
to
is
read?
the best way to approach an addendum for a one-semester disciplinary suspension that did not involve any serious legal or criminal action? How seriously will law schools worry about a single issue when most other factors are strong? It really depends on what that issue is. A disciplinary suspension, you're going to want to that will be looked at seriously. So you want to again, it might not have any legal ramifications, but it had an academic ramification. So you're going to want to take that very seriously, and you're going to really dive into what exactly the context was, the situation that it was, and what the outcome was, and how it's not going to make the issue moving forward. And I highly advise that you contact the law schools directly to ask, is there anything additional that you need to supply? Um, Awesome. If we are asked to include awards we receive from other universities in an application, but we already have them listed in our resume, should we relist them? That happens quite a bit. You'll see a lot of repetitive questions. So I do recommend some things like that listed on your resume. And what's in your resume is also going to be your work history. But law schools also ask you to, type in your work history in the application itself and type in any additional words. So it does put more pressure on you. You have to type it in differently. The reason being is that it will populate in the application differently in different spaces. So we needed to populate manually by you in the application, so it populates in the actual system that we have. But we also need to be in the resume so that we can pull just resumes for review. So you should kind of include those in both places.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. We really appreciate it. Students, if you could go ahead and fill out the post-event survey that's in the chat. Again, we really appreciate you. The addendums are definitely an area of confusion for a lot of students. We really appreciate you taking the time and answering all of the many questions we've all had. And thank you for putting your phone number and email in the chat as well.
Not a worry. And again, I look forward to engaging. The one last thing I'll say is, again, I've harked and said that this is a really competitive cycle this year and probably next and the month after that. So how can you get ahead of that? Engagement. Engage with the schools you're interested in. Call them, email them, go to tours, go to their events. That stuff is tracked. And the more you engage with school, the more we know that you're a bona fide interested applicant.